I ended the last video with I got the transmission electronics functioning, I think. I went to take it for a test drive, and when I tried to start the car, it would not start. So what I did is, first of all, I tried to find out if there were any loose connections. I couldn't find any. While I was doing that, I found that I could, in fact, rotate the distributor, which would throw the timing off. So decided to go and reset the timing using the tool that I got with the Hyperspark distributor, and by setting it to top dead center, which I set it on 0 there on the balancer, and checked to make sure that the rotor was pointing at the #1 cylinder. Well, the first time I did it, it was pointing to #5, I believe, but it wasn't #1, so it was 180 degrees off. Actually 360. 2 revolutions of the engine for each revolution of the distributor. So I bumped it around again and brought it to where the rotor was pointing at #1, and I was at 0 on the balancer. And because I couldn't find that tool to line it up and lock it in, I decided to go old school, which is just crank the ignition and turn the distributor until it starts, and then time it. Well, when I did that, it still didn't start. So I had my timing light out because I was going to time it, and I went and pulled the trigger on that and cranked the engine. I couldn't see a flash. So it doesn't appear that I'm getting any spark at that point. So what I did is I went and I put a spark plug an ignition tester to see if you're getting a spark between the coil and the distributor, so that it should have been sparking for every cylinder, and it didn't spark at all. So I don't know that there's anything that I did in playing with the transmission that should have affected the sniper. So now I've got to troubleshoot it. I'm going to do some easy ones first. First thing I'm checking, because it's easy to get to, is power to the capacitive discharge box. And I've already tested this because I wasn't sure whether I could get the pin in, but from the tester, so I know that I do have power here. It's just a matter of getting the pin in well enough and making contact. So I'm showing 13.17 volts. So I know that's good. The ground is wired directly back to the battery, so I have my meter connected to one of the grounding blocks I put in. I should be able to test the ground and see some resistance. Don't have an open circuit as long as I can hold that pin on the pin where it connects. So I know I have power to the ignition box. So I'm going to plug that back in. And once I get that plugged in, I think I need to turn the key on to see if I have voltage to the coil. I'm going to check it, and I have a cheat sheet right here. Says that, oops, wrong cheat sheet, I think. Yeah, that's the wrong cheat sheet. I have to look at the other one. I think I brought it out here, but I believe it's the orange wire is 12 volts to the orange. Connects to the positive terminal of the coil. The only wire that makes electrical contact with the coil positive terminal. And the brown with orange, which is the other one on that connector, is the negative side of that. So I'm going to test that with power, the key off, just to make sure that there's no power in it. There shouldn't be. So we're going to the orange wire. Well, that's interesting. 2.26 volts with power off. That is interesting. Because this, unless that's leftover charge in the CD box, because it does have a capacitor in it, I believe. But 2 volts seems low. I'm going to turn it on and see what the reading is. Ignition on. I didn't expect to see that. There is a little LED light on and it, not to my surprise, is glowing red, which says there's a problem with the system. And I think the reason there's a problem with the system is because I've got this unplugged. So I'm still on ohms. It's not good to test volts that way. No wonder I was getting a reading. Shows negative 0.01 volts. And the orange with the black shows 11.7. I'm sorry, the black with the orange, so it shows 11.7. Make sure I have this grounded properly. In other words, my meter common going to ground, and my other lead going to probing to test. That is interesting because that is not what the directions say. It says I should be positive on the orange wire. That is interesting. So I didn't have the meter quite in the picture, so I don't know whether you were able to see the voltages I was showing. So I may delete the previous video that I had and use this one. At any rate, I'm probing the orange wire to the coil from the CD ignition box, and that should be the positive wire, and it's showing negative 0.01 volts. If I probe what should be the negative wire, it's showing 11.77 volts. Shut off the camera and record that, write it down so that when I talk to Holley in the morning, I could tell them exactly what I have found. Okay, just to show you what else I did, I probed those with ignition off. And I showed 0 volts, so I'm probing the orange wire and the orange, black and with orange stripe wire, and now I'm showing volts. That went to 0 before. Maybe I took it off of the That is very strange. 0 on the orange wire. Moving it around, I can't make a connection. 9 volts on the negative wire. And because there's no negative, that negative would be if it was negative voltage. So it is positive voltage on the wire that should be negative. I go get a pad of paper and start writing stuff down so that I can communicate to Holley exactly what I've found here. Unfortunately, I didn't remember to turn on the video, but as I had that connector off of the coil right there, I measured the resistance between the two terminals there, and the resistance was about 30 ohms, which tells me that I don't have an open circuit in that coil. So the coil probably good, but I don't know how much resistance that should be. It could be a short between those two wires and the windings, and it could still be a bad coil. Okay, what you're seeing right there is a little orange dot, and now I lost it. There it is, little orange dot. That is an indicator LED on the CD ignition box. And with power on and it working correctly, that is supposed to be orange when the engine is not started. And it's supposed to go to red. I hope I'm not screwing up the focus of the camera here, but I'm going to try to pull this wire off again when it's not working correctly. That should have gone to red. Still says orange. That can't be right. I'm going to cycle the ignition off and back on and see if that turns to red, because it's supposed to be red if it's not working correctly. So I've cycled the engine off, and I thought I saw it red before. There you go. No, that's not. That's actually not the light. I'm looking at the recording mode on the camera. It's very difficult to get this focused in there because of the lighting conditions. You know what? I'm going to turn off the lights in the garage here. Maybe that will help it show up better. I still have the garage door open though, so let's close that too. Dim it down a little bit, maybe it'll make it a little easier to see that. See if I can zoom in on it. There you go. There's the light. Still looks orange to me. It was red before whenever I disconnected that. You'll just have to take my word for that, but actually that is red. Doesn't show up on the camera very well. I'm going to plug it back in, see if maybe that will change to orange. I don't know whether you'll be able to see that change on the video. Yeah, I think maybe you did. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to leave the lights off and focused in on that. So I'm going to try to crank it because I can't see the color of the light when I'm cranking. I know that it's supposed to be green if the engine is running, but I don't know really what color it's supposed to be when it's cranking. Another thing I'm going to do here is I have my sniper unit and it's set to show me the RPM. I want to see if it shows RPM as I crank. And it did show me RPMs. I'll have to view the video to see if that turned that indicator green. But it's showing me RPMs. I think that tells me that the distributor signal is actually getting back to the sniper. So I'm going to shut the camera off now and we'll proceed to the next thing that I think I can test. Okay, so I'm going to show you again. that what I just told you, that the sniper is recognizing that the engine is cranking, because this says stall at RPM, and as I crank the engine, you'll see that that shows around 200. Still no start. But I think maybe ruled out the distributor. I'm thinking maybe the CD ignition box is suspect, but I've got a couple other things here that I've written down that I can test. We'll see what's up next. So one of the next things on my list is to basically remove the ECU part of the process that's in the Sniper Quadrajet unit itself. It says to remove that from the process by changing the configuration so that it is not to non-timing controlled spark. So apparently if that is removed, I'm going to try to do this on camera for you. So it's under Wizards, and select the type. I'm looking for Quadrajet. There we are. Pick Quadrajet. I don't know why this defaults to 8-cylinder or 6 cylinders, because engine displacement, this is a board 30 over 350, so it is 355 according to my 355 according to my machine shop. And I want to target idle speed of 650. Save that. Cam type stock or mild. Ignition type CD box. No. I wonder if I need to just do CD box and not Hyperspark distributor in order to do it non-timing controlled. Please cycle the ignition to complete the operation. So if this works and the ECU is bad, I think what should happen is two things. I'm going to focus in on the little indicator there that says I'm getting a spark. But the other thing is the engine should run at idle. or at least attempt to fire. But the key thing is if I'm getting a spark, it's probably the ECU that's bad. Still no spark. Try and test it with the timing light, because that doesn't take as much power to run it. This thing, the starter is hard to trigger from outside because you have to press it way down. No flashing on the timing light. So I'm going to reconfigure it back to Hyperspark distributor since that didn't seem to do anything. See what else we can test. So I found in the documentation for the Sniper EFI ignition box a white wire test. And it says, if you are using the white wire points or electronic amplifier of the MSD to trigger the ignition, follow these steps. Remove the coil wire from the distributor cap and position the terminal so it is approximately a ½ inch away from a good ground. And I have done that. Disconnect the MSD white wire from the distributor points or the ignition amplifier. Turn the ignition to the on position. Do not crank the engine. Tap the white wire to ground several times. Each time the wire is pulled away from ground, a spark should jump from the coil wire to the ground. If spark is present, the ignition is working properly. Now, thanks for that information, but I want to know what's wrong if it doesn't happen. And I have tested this with my little spark tester that you put between the spark plug and the coil wire, or the spark plug wire, I should say. And it didn't work with that. So now I have that blue wire there going from the coil, and you can just barely see right over here. It is less than a ½ inch away from that grounding block I put in. So I've got the ignition on. I'm going to try to tap that wire. Now it doesn't tell you which side of that wire to tap. Also, I think it's the one that comes from the Sniper unit itself. And that's what I'm going to try first. If that doesn't work, maybe I'll try from the CD box side, because I'm starting to believe that the CD box is the problem. So let's see if I can get a good ground here. And I don't know what's a good ground around here. Tapping the valve cover, that's not doing anything. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get me a jumper wire, and if I have to, I'll put a bullet style connector, which is what I disconnected there on the white wire. I'll put it on a longer piece of wire so that I can take it up to that known good grounding block that I installed. And we'll see what happens then. But right now it definitely looks like no spark. So what I've done, I'm going to attempt to use a test light to do that triggering. But the other thing it will do for me, since I've connected it to the solid ground, it will tell me whether or not there's current in either one of those wires. So if I do it on the sniper side, nothing happens and there's no current. If I do it on the, whoops, okay. I did have a bit of a spark there once. Just one. And I do have current on this side because the light's coming on. But they don't tell you which side of this. They make it sound like you're supposed to test the side that's on the sniper side, I think. They're not really clear. So I get a slight spark if I let it sit a while and then do it from the ignition box, the CD ignition box side, but only once, and then I have to wait a long time. So if that's the proper side to ground, then to get a spark, then it's clearly not juicing up the coil enough. It should be juiced continuously. So it should be every time the wire is pulled away from ground, a spark should jump. Let's see if that's happening when I make the ground or when I pull the ground. Hopefully I can make the ground quickly and and get it connected good right away. And now I have current and it didn't spark. Let's try it from the other side again. Nothing. So unfortunately, they tell you what to test, and they tell you if you get a spark, it's good. What they don't tell you is, well, if you don't get a spark, which I didn't. Right now, I guess I am suspecting the CD ignition box. And the reason is the reversed voltages, as I see it, that are on the two prongs that go to the coil, two wires that go to the coil. So I will call it a day for now, because I don't think I can go any further without talking to Holley and finding out what all this data I've collected means. So I don't know if that's going to be it for this video, and I'm going to have a follow-up after talking to Holley, or whether I'll combine them all into one. But there will be more news forthcoming. So I found my distributor tool that comes with the Hyperspark distributor. Set it back to top dead center and put all the wires back where they were. So the next thing I want to do is get a log so that I can share that with Holley when I talk to them. So, data log not running. 405 megabytes available. I'm going to start the log. Logging started. I'm going to crank the engine. Oops. I hope that wasn't the wrong thing to do. I shut the engine off instead of stopping the log. Let's do that again. Start the log. Stop the log. Data log not running. Okay, looks like I have 2 logs out there. I will take that into the computer and see what it tells me, and then I'll call Holley. I talked to Holley yesterday about the sniper situation, and first person I talked to, they wanted me to, after I explained what I was seeing, except I forgot to explain that when I tested the resistance between the 2 primary terminals on the coil, that I was getting a reading of 33. So I explained everything to them. They wanted me to send the whole throttle body unit in, and then because MSD makes the capacitive discharge ignition box, they transferred me over to talk to them. Well, I explained everything that was going on, and the guy agreed that the readings I was getting off of the positive and negative leads to the primary coil were kind of strange. But I also happened to mention to him that I had a 33 ohms resistance on the coil primary terminals, and he said that shouldn't be, it should be 0.4. And so looking at he also told me that because I had purchased this thing a couple of years ago, in spite of the fact that I've only run it for less than an hour, they weren't going to do anything about the warranty. So rather than send in the whole sniper throttle body for them to test it, I went to Summit Racing, and first I bought the coil. And what I did was I took my ohm meter with me to make sure that the one I bought had a reading of 0.4 ohms of resistance. And as I sat in the parking lot after I bought it, I tested it, and the probe that I was using on my ohm meter fell apart in my hand. So immediately my thought was, my ohm readings on this one that's on the car is suspect. So I came home. I actually had another lead with me because I took a spare one with 2 pointed probes so I had 2 pointed probes and one that I had an alligator clip on that I could clip it on. And so it was one of the pointed probes that broke. So I replaced that one and checked the resistance on the new coil I bought. And it indeed, when I added the resistance of just my leads to the resistance I was supposed to have in the coil, it was right where it should have been. So I was like debating, do I go into Summit while I'm in the parking lot and buy the CD capacitive discharge ignition box, or do I go home and test the ignition coil that I had on the car that had presumably failed the day before? Well, I decided to come home and test the coil. So I come home, I test the coil with good leads, and guess what? It is exactly the same as the one I had bought. So then back to Summit, and I took the coil back and I purchased a CD ignition box, which was, the coil was $51 and the ignition box was $338. So you can see why I wanted to make sure it wasn't the coil first. So at any rate, one of the things that I had tested, and I don't know if I videoed it the other day, was there's something called a white wire test that is documented on the instructions for the ignition box. And what you basically do is set up, and I'm gonna walk over to the other side of the car, and I'm gonna turn the ignition on. You basically take the white wire from the CD ignition box and you ground it out, and every time you do that you should get a spark. So what I have done, and they tell you to put your spark plug wire within a ½ inch of a good ground. So I've done that, and I've made a jumper here from the white wire from the ignition box, and I'm going to try to do this without getting my hand in the way, but every time I break contact with the ground it should spark. Oh geez. So today it's sparking. It did not do that the other day. Wow. Now I don't know what to think. I haven't installed the new box yet. I was trying to demonstrate that the old box didn't work, and I'm not demonstrating that. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, that test failed. Okay, so now what is not connected is the spark signal from the throttle body to the CD box. So now, I guess what I need to do is hook that back up. What I was getting the other day is when I would touch that ground, I'd get one spark and then it wouldn't spark after that. But if I let it set for a couple minutes and touched it again, I'd get one spark and then it would not spark anymore. Touching it on the valve cover now and it is sparking. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to shut off the ignition and reconnect it to the throttle body. And if it fires up, then I don't know what I'm going to do, because I don't have faith that it's going to work well for me. But I don't know what else to do at this point. Okay, what I decided to try and do is try and crank it and see if I see spark when I'm cranking it. It won't start at this point because I don't have the coil wire connected, but okay, I did not see a spark. Just to be sure, I'm going to put the coil wire back on and crank it again. Just in case it was sparking, but I couldn't see it. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think I am going to have to take the whole throttle body unit off and send it into Holley for repair. So here goes. I wonder now that wonder if the problem kind of all along was that the ECU failed in the throttle body and it was screwing up the signals between the CD ignition box and the coil. So just for grins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this test coil wire back on and do the test now that I've tried to start it, and see if maybe the signal was screwed up in the ignition box. Okay, I'm set up to test that again. Still getting a spark. I don't know why this test didn't work the other day, but it didn't. Wow. Okay, I guess I've already got a return number to put on the box that I send in the throttle body unit. So I guess it's going to be a week or two at least until I get that back. Assuming I can get it sent off to them soon. But I guess it's progress when you find out something is or isn't working. So 2 trips to Summit Racing, and I'm probably going to end up taking back an unopened box with the CD ignition box in it, returning that, saving myself $300 and some. But I don't know what it's going to cost to get the thing repaired. I'll try to argue that, you know, I've only run it for less than an hour with the actual engine running, and only probably less than 2 hours with the key on and the sniper unit powered. But at least I have a plan. I guess that's going to be the end of this video. So thanks for watching. I am not going to video the removal and reinstallation of the throttle body unit because that's on videos elsewhere in my series. So I'm going to put on some music and chill while I do some teardown. Okay, I lied about not videoing the disassembly process because I did such a fine job, in my opinion, of hiding all their cables they have coming out of that throttle body, and I want to make sure that I can put them back the way they were. So I'm doing this more for me, but I'll probably post it online anyways. But I've already taken off the throttle cable, and I've put the 2 nuts that hold it on, and there's lock washers on there as well. I put them on so that they don't get lost. And I'm going to go over to the other side before I actually loosen up the throttle body on this side, because the bracket for the throttle cable is right there, and that's kind of a bear to get to. You have to get a wrench underneath here to turn it, and it's very difficult to turn. You have to keep flipping the wrench. But this I'm not going to send in. I'm going to leave it attached to the cable. And next thing I'm going to do, just because it's convenient while I'm over here, is I'm going to take off that PCV hose that goes to the front of the throttle body. Turns out that is going to come off easier after I take the throttle body off, because there's a clamp underneath and it's hard to get to with it attached. Okay, over here from the passenger side, there's a 7-pin connector that goes, it loops under here and goes into the throttle body. Let's see if I can get that off. I had it off. yesterday. It's just, none of these clamps are easy to operate. So that's off. And then there are two more cables that come here. And one of them is, okay, I've got this zip tied to a bunch of other stuff. One of them goes to the 10-pin connector. And the other just loops around and comes back over here, and I believe goes to this. Not sure what that cable is anymore. That might be. I believe that's the oxygen sensor. And again, I did that just so that I didn't have to coil up the wires. Looked a little neater if I just pulled them further and looped them around. So, hope that showed up on the video. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this tape off of here and take this cable protector off. And that goes to the 10 pin, and as I said, I think that other thing that it goes to is actually the oxygen sensor, yes. I'll also remove this cable cover. That is protecting and hiding the cable that goes to the oxygen sensor. The CAN bus cable, and one other cable that I can't see where it goes at this point. Oh, that is the temperature sensor cable that goes down to the temperature sensor in the block.